What up, what up? Salvador Briggman here. Welcome back to the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. On this show, we love to talk about crowdfunding, really get into it, and really try to break down exactly what these campaigns are doing in order to get funding, to try to demystify the process for you. When I was first getting started in the industry back in 2012, I think it was just such a huge mystery to see why people were actually funding campaigns, why people were taking action, and how an ordinary person who's never maybe created a product before, created a game before, designed a gadget, designed a gizmo, how an ordinary person can actually do that, can pull together a diverse range of skill sets, get something out there that was originally just in their head, but have hundreds of people fund this, have thousands of people take action on this, and raise 6 to 7 figures online. Man, that is so freaking cool. So whoever it is that you are in your journey, I hope that you enjoyed today's podcast episode, because in today's episode, I think it's an incredible example of someone who aren't participating in the brass tacks of doing the artwork or doing the gameplay behind a game. They actually are the ones that are enabling this entire process. So we're talking with the creators behind Trailblazers, an outdoor adventure game. And this game has raised over $170,000 for more than 2,700 backers. Really cool. This is actually made by a bunch of dentists, believe it or not. So these dentists, it's their first foray really into wanting to create their own game. They love playing games themselves. So they decided, why don't we create our own product? Why don't we do this and bring together the talent that's necessary to really pull something like this off? So if you're someone out there that's never created a product, you never made a game, you never done something like that before, I think this episode is really going to fill you with a lot of confidence, as well as getting some of the tricks that they used in order to actually raise more than $170K, more than 2,700 backers, some of the lessons that they've learned, some of the things that they might do differently, and advice as well they have for other people out there that are really trying to break into the scene when it comes to Kickstarter. In addition, if you have not yet, go and listen to some of the other archives we got on the podcast. I think we're at a little over 400 or so episodes now when it comes to the podcast. You can listen on iTunes, on Spotify, you can listen on YouTube. I love listening to podcasts on the way to work, or if you're just kind of running, or you're doing exercise and you're cleaning your house, whatever it is. It's a great way to just be listening and learning at the same time when you're doing some other kind of activity. In addition, I think that hearing some of these real world stories fills you with confidence, gives you tons of tactics and strategy that you can take away, that you can apply to your campaign. So I really hope that you enjoy that. In addition, some of the people who listen to this show are like, Sal, this is great. I love listening to this, but at the same time, wouldn't it be great if there's like a condensed version? Just like, tell me exactly what I got to do step by step when it comes to launching a Kickstarter campaign. I have 2 answers for you if you fall into that category, and you just don't want to honestly, take your time to really invest and to listen to these different episodes, which I know are a little bit lengthy, right? But I do try to really get to the brass tacks and really understand and kind of pull back the hood for you. But if you don't want to take all that time, I have 2 very quick resources to really speed up the learning process. The first is my book, The Kickstarter Launch Formula. This book is available on Audible. I read it with my passion and my enthusiasm. It will share with you literally the blueprint for running a Kickstarter campaign, literally the formula which I've unearthed and discovered, and now just kind of handing to you on a silver platter. So if you want to grab a copy of that, you can go to crowdcrux.com/Kickstarter audio. That link is crowdcrux.com/Kickstarter audio, crowdcrux.com/Kickstarter audio. That link will take you there. And I believe also, if you are interested, you can actually get that book for free if you sign up for a free 30-day trial of Audible. In addition, I got a free course for you walking you through how to actually do one of these Kickstarter campaigns. So you've been listening to some of the other people out there and you're like, I understand this from a very high level perspective, but I want more of like what I actually got to do, right? From an execution angle, I think you're going to like this free course. All you got to do is go to crowdcrux.com/Kickstarter. That link is crowdcrux.com/Kickstarter. Crowdcrux.com/Kickstarter will take you there, and you can check out my free course, which will show you exactly how to run one of these campaigns, how to get funding, how to get attention, how to get people, like stark raving mad about your product, whether that's a physical product, design product, could be more artistic in nature, you could be doing a novel, you could be doing something cool like a comic book, you could be doing a tabletop game, whatever it is, there's going to be tons of great advice for you there. Hope you enjoy today's podcast episode, and let's get to the crux and let's really learn how this individual was able to do a 6-figure Kickstarter campaign, track more than 2,700 backers, and it's coming up right after this. If you're worried about the fulfillment and shipping part of your Kickstarter campaign when it comes to getting out all those perks and rewards to your backers, rest assured I've put together a complete Kickstarter fulfillment and shipping checklist for you, and it's free. This is sponsored by the folks at Fulfillrite, and they thought that you should have this checklist as part of your arsenal going into a crowdfunding campaign. If you want to get instant access to this checklist and it's free, you can go to fulfillright.com/checklist. Again, that is fulfillrite.com/checklist. fulfillright.com/checklist. Just go to that link and you can download it immediately. Hey guys, welcome back to the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. Hey, we have an exceptional guest on the show who's been able to attract more than 2,300 backers, over 146,000, which has been raised for Trailblazers, an outdoor adventure game, a puzzly, portable game of hiking, biking, and kayaking built to survive the great outdoors. We have the creator here on the show today. Nick, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Salvador. It's a pleasure to be here.
Definitely, man. For those who do not have this in front of them, how could you describe Trailblazers to them?
Yeah, so it's a puzzly game where you can play with 1 to 8 players if you get the bigger box version. And what you're trying to do is you have a hand of cards, you pick a couple cards and you put them down on the table and then you pass your hand to the next player. And everybody's doing this at the same time and they're building out their own little area of hiking, biking, and kayaking trails that have to start and come back to eventually. They wind around, they intersect with each other, all kinds of things, but they have to eventually come back to and loop back to their starting camp. And so it makes for a fun 30-minute game that we're aiming to be really approachable for anyone. It doesn't have to be a hardcore or a hobbyist gamer. It can be people that just play Uno or Monopoly. The rules are very simple, but we're also trying to satisfy the hobbyist gamers as well and really kind of straddle that fence.
And how do you identify? Are you a creator? Are you a designer? Are you someone who's a marketer? How do you view yourself?
Yeah, so I'm the publisher of this game. So I represent Bitewing Games, and I do it with another dentist, Bitewing being dental x-ray, right? And so I'm a dentist, and then another dentist and I got into gaming. We started this publishing company where we have some of our own designs that we like to make as well, and we're aiming to publish. But we're also working with award-winning game designers, and that's true for Trailblazers here. This is actually designed by Ryan Courtney, but we are collaborating with him on this project, meaning he came up with the rules and the gameplay, but then we took it and hired an artist. We planned the production, we planned the marketing, and we handled the manufacturing and distribution and all of that. And so basically we pay Ryan royalties for the game that he came up with, but we're the ones actually getting the product to market.
Got it. And from what I understand, you've also done another campaign. Is that right?
Yeah. So almost exactly a year ago, basically, we did our first crowdfunding campaign where we worked with another famous game designer. His name's Rainer Knizia, based out of Germany, and did 3 short, quick card games together as kind of a bundle or collection that was called the Criminal Capers Collection. So this is our second time on crowdfunding doing our second project here with Trailblazers.
What got you passionate about creating these games? Because it's one thing, obviously, to have a hobby, right, where you're playing with your friends after work, or in your case, after looking at someone's teeth, right? And what got you really passionate about creating these board games and tabletops?
Yeah, it was kind of an interesting domino effect that started a few years ago where Kyle and I, the creators of Bitewing Games, we both got into just the hobby of playing games during dental school. We both actually ended up going to the same University, Utah State for undergrad, and then we both ended up at the same dental school, Ohio State University. And during that time, I was surrounded by a lot of fellow professional students, graduate students, other families that were kind of in the same situation as my wife and I. And we're all poor, right? Because we're in college or we're in graduate school. And so you have a limited budget on things you can do for fun in your free time. And we found that just getting together, playing a game on a weekly basis with some neighbors, with friends, whatever, turned out to be a really nice, affordable hobby. It's a nice way to get away from screens too, and just get around the table and socialize with people. And so that led to Kyle and I kind of getting into eventually designing our own games, and that's its own rabbit hole. And then eventually we're like, well, let's try to publish our own games. And the next thing we knew, we were reaching out to these famous designers who we are fans of. We've been playing their games, the previous games that have been published, and suddenly working with it.
What informed that decision of deciding to work with a designer versus kind of designing the own gameplay and rules yourself?
Yeah, that actually relates to kind of one of the big things I've learned about our success with the Criminal Capers collection that we funded with that one, but also with Trailblazers, where we've really exceeded our previous campaign. And it's kind of has to do with credibility as a company. Because I found that with the introduction of crowdfunding in tabletop gaming, and actually for Kickstarter, one of their biggest sectors or one of their biggest categories that gets Kickstarter themselves the most funding is actually tabletop gaming. And so it's crowdfunding has really opened the door for a lot of creators, a lot of people who just want to design their own game and then suddenly realize like, hey, I want to turn this into a product. So there were so many barriers to entry before crowdfunding, and that's really helped people to kind of get their foot in the door and see if the game is marketable, if it works, if people are interested in it. And if they are, they'll pledge for it, and suddenly you can make it where maybe previously you wouldn't have the resources or the reach as far as marketing goes to do that. But because it's so crowded these days, even in the last 5-10 years, tabletop gaming, that category is just so competitive on Kickstarter and other crowdfunding platforms that, you know, if we as no names in the industry come on with our own design, and maybe it's a really cool design, maybe it has great art, but if nobody knows who we are, if we don't have kind of a history that folks can trust or any kind of credibility, then that's really tough to get people to pledge for something they're not going to receive for maybe a year. And there's no guarantee that it's actually going to be good quality because we don't have any of that credibility. And so I've found that one of the easiest ways to establish credibility, I think in any industry, is to borrow it. And what I mean by that is we had our own designs that we wanted to publish, but again, we didn't have that credibility. So then we thought, okay, well, what if we publish a famous designer's game first that people trust? They know he's going to make a good game. And then on our end, they just have to trust us to actually deliver on the products. And that helps to kind of dampen the blow, I'd say, for a first-time creator. And so what we did was we went to Reiner Knizia. This is one of the most famous game designers in the entire industry. He's won countless awards. He has over 600 published designs. He's been doing it for decades, and he has a huge following of fans. And so I shot him an email and said, hey, we're two dentists and we're looking to start a board game publishing company, and we would love to publish maybe one or more, maybe a collection of your simple card games, any designs that you have that you've been working on. And that's where things really started off for us. And I guess the first thing that helped us was that I came in and said, hey, we're dentists. And I was kind of borrowing. I was going to say, that's great. Yeah. Yeah. I was borrowing the credibility of dentistry and that as a profession, because people tend to trust their dentist, right? I mean, they're doing a lot of things in your mouth that you're not comfortable with them doing, but you trust them to do it, right? And you have to go through a pretty grueling process to even get that degree. And so I think that really helped get our foot in the door with Reiner, to where he's like, okay, let's work together and see how it works. And we did that crowdfunding campaign with him last year and had great success, and he loved working with us. And then we took that and went to another famous designer who doesn't make quite as many games per year. And so most designers, they may design 1 or 2 games or even less per year. And if they're a famous designer and they know they can get their game in with a good company, they're not going to trust it to some no-name indie publisher like us, like Bitewing Games, right? Yeah. But so we had already worked with a famous designer at that point. And we said, hey, we've worked with Reiner Knizia. He likes working with us. And this is Ryan Courtney. And we said, hey, we're interested in this hiking game that you're working on. We'd love to work with you on that. And that gave us credibility to work with him. And then at that point, he has some designs that have built a really big following of fans. And this one follows very closely behind those. And so bringing that to Kickstarter, people see, oh, this is the next game from this designer that I really love. And suddenly it doesn't matter that Bitewing Games doesn't have a single game in the market yet, a physical game that people have played and tested, because we're working with these professionals and we've kind of absorbed that credibility from established names.
So this first project that you mentioned, you raised around $29K from 511 people. What did that mean to you, having that success under your belt?
Yeah, that showed us that, I don't know, people are interested in our style of game. They're interested in what we're trying to bring to the table. And to me, Kyle and I knew going in that we probably wouldn't make money. We probably wouldn't be profitable from that first campaign. It's hard to do as a first-time creator unless you're a viral success. And so we knew that going in, and we definitely did not, that's not profitable yet, but we do have leftover games we're going to bring to retail within a couple months here of the Criminal Capers collection. But we knew that was a good starting point the big thing is establishing a fan base, a following of your own brands. And we knew that we could carry that into Trailblazers as well. So we were excited. But of course, for this to transform from a really expensive hobby into a business, you need to start, especially with tabletop gaming, you typically need to, if you're going to do kind of these expensive art-wise and production-wise games to produce, then you need to do better than 29K.
Yeah, I mean, you've really surpassed it, obviously, with your second one.
Yeah.
Like, your second one is 2,300 people plus, right? This thing is knocking it out of the park. You still got 22 days to go. I was going to say, one of my questions on your first one is just like, what does it feel like to have people around the world playing your game?
Oh, it's amazing to see. Yeah, so some of those games are actually delivering to backers right now. They've kind of reached European and international backers before they reach the US, but it's cool to see people start commenting and saying, hey, I played this with my parents. I played this with my kids. I played this with some friends, and we had a great time. And it's amazing to see, like, when you start with just a vision, Reiner pitches to us these games with different themes or with just very simple rules and not much else on them. And then you have a vision for what the game could look like and what it could feel like and the kind of experience it could offer to folks. And then to finally see that come to fruition, it takes months to get there, but it's a very satisfying experience. And honestly, that's a lot of the reason why Kyle and I are here doing this, because we have good, solid jobs, right? We don't need to be here doing this. And so far, I think
for it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a passion project, right? And a lot of that payoff doesn't come from the sales that we make, but rather from the experience that we provide to others. And the crowdfunding and the pledges that we get help sustain us and help us to justify this rather than just go back to our jobs, which is great.
I mean, I think the experiences that you've had as a player, right? Being able to play with other people, get away from screens, make memories, have a hobby that's not super expensive. You're creating that exact same experience for other people with this game.
Yeah, and that's been a huge thing for us in a society where we're so reliant on screens and computers to get our jobs and our work done, and we have social media and things kind of just trying to drive us to our phones as frequently as possible. It's so refreshing to get away from all that and to just set it all aside and actually have face-to-face interactions. And that's really what we're aiming to do, is bring families and friends together in meaningful but easy to access ways.
One of the things I was noticing is, I mean, first of all, you guys got funded with the second campaign in 90 minutes, which is incredible. But what does it feel like behind the scenes before you really hit that launch button, like the day before you and Kyle are having discussions? Like, what kind of going through your mind the day before you go live with this?
It's a very different experience between this Trailblazers campaign and Reiner Knizitz's Criminal Capers collection, because with the Criminal Capers collection, I think we had maybe 300 followers on the Kickstarter page before then. And our funding goal was 20,000. And the thought process was more, are we going to fund? How many of these 300 followers are actually going to pledge? Yeah, who are these people, and how many are going to pledge, and can we actually cross that line, and are we going to make it to really justify all of this work that we've done? Versus with Trailblazers, I think we had about 1,500 or so, probably 1,700 followers going into it, and a lot more invested as far as sending this out to content creators, to social media people, and getting the word out about it. And so we felt a lot more comfortable going into Trailblazers than we did with the Criminal Capers collection. But then the question became, okay, are we going to make enough to sustain ourselves long term? Like, are we going to have to slow down our ambitions and our output and kind of just let the fans come in on their own? Or is this going to happen with the Kickstarter? And I think the latter is happening, where we're able to keep steady and frequent pace of putting out great games because of the support we've gained from the second campaign. And that's a huge relief for us.
I mean, just looking at your page, first of all, it's so well designed and such incredibly cool artwork. And it looks so fun to play as well. One of the questions I had for you is, do you have any thoughts on how you really were successful in announcing this to your audience? Like, did you build up an audience ahead of time? How did you get people on the page within the first couple of days? What did you really do to make this such a quick success for you?
Well, yeah, the easiest thing was just launching on Kickstarter again, where we already had over 500 people from the previous campaign who would be notified and who already kind of supported us previously. And so they're probably the most open to supporting us again. But, how do you add new people? That's the real question. And how do you build on that audience? And a lot of it has just been playing to our strengths, to be honest, because I think every publishing company in the board game industry has various strengths, whether it be they're working with a famous designer, or they're working with a really excellent artist who they've kind of locked in, or is their full-time employee, and kind of exclusive look and feel to their games that nobody else has. It was a lot of things that Kyle and I personally enjoyed doing. In Kyle's case, he loves photography. He loves making videos. He started a YouTube channel for Bitewing Games as well. So for him, we realized with the Criminal Capers games, if you go back and look at that campaign page, we had a workable prototype that we were showing off to folks, but it wasn't the final production copy of the game. And so it didn't look very quality-wise, it didn't look amazing. It was just mostly a proof of concepts as far as what the final production games would be. This time we invested a lot more we went directly to the manufacturer that we're going to have mass produce these games. And we said, hey, we want 20 early samples of this. And one of those I sent to Kyle, who took these photos, and he took photos of it being outside next to a lake and things like that on the hiking trail, and really showing people like, hey, we have a vision for this product and here it is right here. You don't have to imagine it. You don't have to hope that we're going to nail what we're promising, but we've already created it and we just need your help mass producing it now. And I think a picture is worth 1,000 words, right? And being able to show, hey, here's a clamshell case, a travel case with a carabiner and waterproof cards that fit right into it. And you can take this thing camping if you want. You can take this thing traveling. You can play it in a hotel. It's very easy to bring along. And it's so much easier to show people that vision. And so these pictures have done great with like marketing and Facebook ads and stuff like that, because we just show it. We don't have to tell it, we show it. And then on another thought of building our audience, I like writing personally. And that's why I've started a blog and a podcast with Bitewing Games, recommending games to folks to play, trying out new games and sharing my opinions on them. But then I took that a step further, and Reddit is a huge social media website and app that a lot of people go to. There's a very large community in the board game subreddit of folks who go there and discuss all things games. But one thing that a lot of bloggers or video creators or podcasters don't utilize is Reddit, because it's a little bit harder. You have to abide by the rules as far as promotion, self-promotion, things like that. But I started adapting my blog posts to Reddit itself. And every 2 weeks, I would put a new post on there. And then at the end, just plug very simply Bitewing Games. I would plug Trailblazers and say, hey, the only reason I can do such high effort posts that are useful to you guys and kind of engaging to dive into is because people are supporting us with crowdfunding and with publishing. And if you're interested in Trailblazers, then please give us a follow or subscribe to our email, or now it's check out our Kickstarter page. And these posts that I've done to Reddit have started to get 50, 100, 150,000 views and dozens and dozens of shares. And this has been for a company that has 300 followers on Twitter and 300 followers on Instagram, to kind of play to our strengths, and for me to be passionate about writing and take that to Reddit where we can really thrive, has really helped to build our audience as well. And I think just finding those little niches where you can shine as a creator and really you can access folks who are also passionate about the things you're trying to create and share with them, can go a long ways.
Yeah, that's so freaking cool, man. And just also to piggyback on that, even looking at some of the gifts that you have, like showing your piece going into this glass of water, and like how just rugged and durable also it is, right? The different pieces of the game, it just sells it. Like, it's so great. And I think that your ability to do that with your partner and bring together the different skill sets, it really does make the whole thing look very professional, right? So I can overcome with that.
Yeah, and Kyle's done an excellent job with the Kickstarter page, all the gifts and the photography and stuff. And he's really helped the game to shine after we've hired an artist to make it. And you still need to be able to sell it, right? And he's done an excellent job with that. And then it's important also, I think, to know like what your limits are and certain things we know we can't do or we can't do very well, and just hiring that out, delegating it out, finding people who are good at it so that you can bring people the full package when you present it on crowdfunding.
So when you were launching this in your back of mind, did you have a target? Like, I know you have your other game, for example, like if you're like, okay, if we raise like 2 times more, that'd be great. Like, did this surpass your expectations? Have there been any surprises so far since you've been live?
Yeah, I think going into it, for us, we've been trying to stand out in unique ways. Because like I said, even on crowdfunding on Kickstarter, tabletop gaming is very, very competitive. There are a lot of different really excellent campaigns that are trying to get people's attention. And it seems like every year publishers are getting better at, maybe 5-10 years ago, you'd get away with the proof of concepts with very little art. But now it's like you need almost a completely finished game for folks to look at. Otherwise, they're just going to find something else that is presented better. And so going in, when we investigated the clamshell case, that's something that publishers have never done before. The hard shell case with the carabiner, there's a lot of games out there that focus on being travel friendly, and there's really cool ones that do it. There's a company called Button Shy that just has wallet games, and they literally give you a wallet with 18 cards inside, and a surprising amount of fun and game to be had in that. There's other games that have packaged. People are probably familiar with Bananagrams. That one's packaged in a banana pouch, which is kind of cool, kind of unique. The things that stand out and get people's attention, but nobody's done something that's really rugged and durable like this. And so we knew if we presented this well, it has a lot of potential to gain traction both within the hobbyist community, but also outside of that, because people are naturally drawn to travel-friendly things and kind of these colorful components. And so we felt like, we did feel like we could cross 6 digits with crowdfunding. That was kind of, personally, that was kind of my internal goal. Okay, let's try to hit 100 grands. And I thought we could do it, but you never know, right? There's always factors you can't control or predict that happen. And so, no, I mean, to hit that within, I think, like 4 days of launching has been amazing. And to see that we're just barely a week from when we launched and we've almost reached 150 grand is definitely beyond what we were even set as our goal, as our hopes. And so this communicates to us, okay, we have something here that we can really work with and take not just from this crowdfunding campaign, but through the next few years, I think.
So I mean, you've had this idea of how games get made. You've kind of seen it now in the trenches. What is the most exciting or rewarding part of this process for you personally?
I think kind of the starting process probably, and the end, when the games actually reach backers. And we're just barely starting to see this from our Criminal Capers games. But probably the start and the end are two of the most thrilling parts for me, because as a publisher, a lot of what you're doing is kind of setting out a vision for what the game can become and then trying to execute on that vision. For example, with our Criminal Capers games, one of the games that Reiner pitched to us was an alcohol smuggling game. And it was really a funny theme where you're trying to smuggle alcohol across the border and you're only allowed to bring 1 bottle in a suitcase. And if you bring more and you get caught by the border police, then they're going to confiscate those bottles and earn them for themselves. And so then you're trying to bribe them to let you across and not look in your suitcase and things like that. But it's a very simple game as well. It's one that you can easily teach in under a minute and play in 20 minutes and introduce to family, to parents, to kids. It doesn't have to be a gamer. And we realized like, hey, the alcohol theme, like that's not very super kid friendly, right? And so then our thought was, well, what if we make it like a soda smuggling game? Because with that, we could come up with these cool soda brands with our artists and keep the spirit of the game, but kind of have like this sugar or soda prohibition rather than alcohol and still get the same effect across, but make it available for a wider audience. So decisions like that for each of our projects and games is really fun to come across, and then finding the right artist to do it and seeing them come up with these amazing illustrations and concepts and just seeing it come to life and then getting it into people's hands is a very satisfying process for us.
I can imagine that. And I think that as well, being able to create these experiences for other people is just so freaking cool. Also seeing everything come together. It's a very intellectually challenging pursuit. Like obviously dentistry is something that's very challenging as well. And you need to know your craft. But there are so many variables as well, right? When it comes to putting together a game, I think that can be equally challenging and interesting, right? In those kind of capacities.
Yeah, it's a really interesting dichotomy. I work dentistry mostly in the afternoons. And so I'm an associate dentist, meaning I don't own the practice, which is nice because owning 2 businesses would be a lot to deal with. But it's nice because I show up and I fix teeth. I help people with their issues or whatever. I go home and I don't have to worry about it. Whereas Bitewing Games and publishing is a very, very different experience. We're wearing a lot of hats as a publisher. We have to be a marketer. We have to be a project coordinator and leader. We have to email all kinds of people and correct them on things and work with manufacturers and artists and the designer and develop the game further and work with social media people and getting them to help promote our games. And so, there's a lot of things here that I've never done before. And it can be a little bit scary when you have money on the line and you're hoping you don't totally mess it up. But fortunately, there's a lot of resources out there with the internet and with people who have gone before. A lot of this community, at least in the tabletop industry, is very open with their strategies and what does and doesn't work for them. And those are things that we can stand on their shoulders and learn from and apply to our own campaign as relative newcomers to the industry.
Very cool, man. Where can people go to learn more about your game and some of the other stuff you have coming out?
Yeah, so we have a website, bitewinggames.com, and it's pretty easy to find. because there's nothing else related to Bitewing and games in that way. We're on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and such. We have a newsletter, an email newsletter that you can sign up on our website where usually every 2 weeks, we're sending out an email that features our content as well as our upcoming projects and current projects for publishing. And it's a way to help people both find games that aren't related to us at all, but just great games that we love to play and that they can introduce to their friends and family, but also to support us by doing things like pledging for Trailblazer so you can get this game next year and enjoy that as well. And so there's some good ways to find us, as well as Ryan Courtney's the designer of Trailblazers and Seth Lucas is the artist. And they've done an excellent job with this. And they have other stuff you can check out as well if you really like the art style or you like the style of game. There's a lot to see there, and I'd encourage you to look them up on social media.
Great. And my final question for you, and we can end on this note, if you can speak directly to the audience, and you could end with either a final quote, it could be a word of encouragement, it could be a final tip, it could be something that you wish someone told you when you were getting started, anything along those lines, and we can end on that note.
I once heard a friend say many years ago, and it's always stuck with me. And I think he said it in regards to dating, actually, and just like asking a girl out that you're kind of afraid to ask or seems out of your league, that kind of thing. But his quote was, he said, it's better to say, I can't believe I attempted that than to say, I wish I would have tried. And I think a lot of us are afraid to try new things because we're afraid of failure. And we're afraid that we're going to waste time or energy, or we're going to end up embarrassed because we fell on our face and it didn't work out. But I think if you give into those feelings and those urges, then you're going to look back on your life. You're going to look back on opportunities and say, I wish I would have tried. And I found that by reaching out to, as a publisher with no credibility in the board game industry, reaching out to a famous German game designer and saying, hey, do you want to work with us? And sometimes I've reached out to other folks as well, asking to work with them. And sometimes you get no response. Sometimes you get rejected, and that happens. But, we got one yes with a German game designer. We got one yes with Ryan Courtney, another famous game designer. And look where that's led us now. And so I'd say it's much better to say, I can't believe I attempted that, because those times where it pays off make you completely forget those times where you failed. And whatever you're thinking about doing, or whatever you wish you would have tried, or that you're afraid to do, I'd say just give it your best shot and don't be afraid about failure, because when it works out, you're going to have a lot more satisfaction than you're going to have regrets.
Well said. Well said. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Nick. Really appreciate it, and good luck with your remaining days here.
Thank you, Salvador.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. My name is Salvador Briggman. Wherever it is that you're hailing in from, I hope that you took some value out of today's podcast episode. No matter what type of project you're trying to do on Kickstarter, maybe you're trying to do a physical gadget or a product of some kind. You're trying to do product design. You're trying to come up with an indie game, or even like a film project or something artistic related, or a tabletop. Whatever it is, listening to these episodes and hearing from a diverse range of guests is one of the best ways to actually discover new strategies, new tactics, new tools and techniques to apply to your actual campaign when you go live. Make no mistake, this is a journey and this is an event. And I've had people who, do campaigns time and time again, just like today's guest. They had a first campaign, which was kind of okay. And I think that they really were looking to improve that. They launched their second one and they absolutely knocked this out of the park. So we might be together for a while, man, right? As you're on this journey and you're looking to really grow your brand online. Or maybe you're looking to come out with a completely new product and get a storm of customers that are absolutely flooding you with orders. It could be, in addition, a tabletop or something like that. You want to have people playing these games. Whatever it is, I hope that you continue to take value out of the episodes that I'm putting out there, and go and check out some of the other ones that I got. In addition, always appreciate a positive rating and review on iTunes or on Spotify. And lastly, if you want to talk and connect one-on-one with me, I do occasionally offer these one-on-one coaching calls. So when it comes to this, I think that one of the biggest obstacles for someone actually doing this campaign is actually just like knowing what to do next. And there's so much hearsay in this industry, and there's so much mystery. And that's really why I called my podcast the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast, because I want to demystify what is for you. But one of the things that I quickly learned early on, so I started my podcast in 2015, started my blog, Crowd Crux, in 2012. What I realized early on is that there's just not enough good quality education in this niche. And that was kind of my goal, if you want to say, or my higher order mission is really I want to help you reach your full potential. I want to help you reach your full potential as a creator, as an entrepreneur, as a business person, as a marketer, as whatever it is you're trying to do. I really want you to help reach that. So one of the ways I try to do that is with my free content, obviously. In addition, I make myself available to the community through these intensive one-on-one coaching calls where we basically go in depth through your entire campaign, really kind of pulling back the hood, understanding what you got to do in order to reach your goals. Everyone has many different categories, types of products. I've seen so many over the years. And I really try to take the entire catalog of information, which is in my head, and apply that in one intensive coaching session for you. So that way you know exactly what you got to do, the best techniques for your particular category, as well know when it comes to your product, the likelihood of success should you even do this Kickstarter thing. And for those of you that are further along, giving you feedback on your marketing resources. Sometimes we'll also even have conversations if I can get involved in some way, helping you out with your project. There's a lot of stuff that we talk about on the coaching calls. And honestly, in some cases, I'd say some of my students are really just feeling held back in some way. I'm trying to help clear that blockage and really understand what they got to do to get this thing out there quickly, to get this thing out there, hopefully in the timeline that they would like. That's what we really go through with these coaching calls. So if you want to learn more about that, you can go and enter some information at the link I'm about to mention. You can go there. You can tell me what you're trying to do. Tell me more about your project. Try to be thorough. Try to be passionate. Man, I love working with passionate people. So go to this link at crowdcrux.com/coaching. That link is crowdcrux.com/coaching. crowdcrux.com/coaching will take you there. You can fill out some information and we can book our one-on-one coaching call ASAP. Thank you so much, man, for tuning into this episode of the podcast. Again, my name is Salvador Briggman. Go check me out on Instagram, YouTube, wherever it's at, and I will see you next time.